So this is my first video response, I think, and it's to SciManDan and Brett Keane, and I think I will explain that in a bit. Let's have a look.
I am the way, the truth, and the life.
I kid you not, that was the introduction to that video. It's 43 seconds long. I will probably fast forward through that when I'm actually editing this a little bit. Did anybody else get like a homoerotic feeling from that, or is it just me? Just me then? Okay, fine.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brett Keane from God TV Radio. I hope you're all having a wonderful day.
Thanks for asking. Yes, so far so good.
We are going to be working on a series called Questions That Atheists Will Never Be Able to Answer.
Okay. Can I just point out one thing? That atheists don't really have any questions to answer. We ask a very simple question, and that is, why do you believe in a god or gods? That is pretty much it. That's the question. Otherwise, atheism is about not being convinced that there is a god or gods, and consequently not believing in one or more of those things. So I'm a bit puzzled. I know that SciManDan answered this video, and he made an effort to actually address the questions in there. I'm going to take the low road here and just point out that this is a category error. Atheists do not have a case to answer here. The proof of burden is on the theists. Theists say there is a God, so show me that there is a God, please.
And I'm going to leave open the comments on this video.
Is that not normal?
And I promise you, it's nothing short of ad homs and personal attacks is the only thing we're going to receive.
Not from me, you're not. I haven't commented on your video yet, but I never leave ad homs and insults. Idiot. Sorry, that's obviously okay. That joke, sorry.
There's not going to be any kind of intelligent answers.
Well, given that you are asking questions which have nothing to do with atheism, I would expect that you will get answers that have nothing to do with atheism. So atheists may be answering your questions here, but if you think that they're not intelligent, then that may be because of the questions that you're asking. So let's say I know nothing of science, okay? Am I an atheist or am I a theist? Well, actually, I could still be an atheist and understand nothing of science. So if you ask me anything about the Big Bang or evolution or wherever else you normally go, I would say, well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But that doesn't mean that God exists. Prove evolution wrong. It doesn't mean that God exists. Prove Big Bang wrong. It doesn't mean that God exists. Prove that gravity doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that God exists. Okay, so let's see where this is going.
I'm going to warn the atheist before we even start. I know that your favorite friend in the whole wide world is Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is not going to be able to answer the questions for you.
My best friend in the whole wild world, I know that's probably hyperbole, but that would be sad. But let's have a look at what Wikipedia actually says about atheism, because I think that we need to clarify this a little bit. And it says, atheism is, in the broadest sense, an absence of belief in the existence of deities. Less broadly, atheism is a rejection of the belief that any deities exist. So it's not necessary for you to reject the existence of God or gods, but the only qualifying thing that you have to have is a lack of belief in the existence of deities. Now, if somebody says, I drank 15 pints the other night, and I say, well, I don't believe you, that doesn't mean I think that they're a liar or that beer doesn't exist. Of course, they may very well have drunk 10 pints or 15 pints or whatever that they're telling me. But it doesn't mean that the burden of proof is now on me to show that they haven't had that amount of beer. So let's carry on with the video.
In fact, after the end of this video, you're going to have to accept and acknowledge that it is more rational and logical that we have a guiding force, an intelligent mind with a purpose and meaning behind our existence after watching this.
So your assumption is that you cannot have life without meaning, right? Or you are assuming that atheists are looking for something like meaning in life. And that is also an erroneous assumption. Um, it's a straw man fallacy at best, but I do think it's a category error in, you know, overall. And the category error is atheists do not state anything beyond that they are not convinced that a god or gods exist. Okay? So since atheists like myself do not believe that there's sufficient evidence to accept a belief in God or gods, we don't accept that a God or gods has made the universe as it is. And we can say, I don't know how it came to be. I'm just not convinced that God did it. And in fact, as a scientist, I would say the answer God did it is actually deleterious to your endeavor. In other words, if I accept the answer God did it, what is there left to research? Well, God did it. So I'm not looking any further into what I could be looking into. And that is sad. That's a limitation, limiting yourself.
What you see before you is created, designed slime. That's right, all this material that you see on the screen was actually created by someone or something. Most likely someone using something to make it. Now in the Bible we have God actually explaining that he came...
But hang on a second. You say that slime was made and then you move on to the Bible. How does that follow? The Bible is, you have to presuppose that God wrote the Bible or gave people the words and they wrote it down somehow, or you have to assume, and then you have to assume that God exists, of course. But how does the existence of something artificial mean that the Bible is true, that there's a God? Why did you even mention that? I'm puzzled.
From outer space, created the earth, and then used the cosmic dust that we can find in the universe to create us from the materials of the universe. That's what the Bible says.
Can you give me a chapter and verse, please, on that? Because I don't remember that. I was brought up a Catholic. As far as I can remember, I've never believed in God, though, because I did the Wednesday, Sunday masses. I did weddings and funerals as an altar boy. I sang in the choir. I did Bible study on a Sunday. And yet, I mean, I wasn't indoctrinated in that sense, clearly, because I thought, well, you know, if God exists, he or she will, or it will reveal itself to me, or himself or herself. And it just didn't happen. So after a while, I went like, okay. So what do I know? I read The Little Vampire when I was 8. And that was a really nice collection of fictional books. And I thought, what's the difference between The Little Vampire and the Bible? And the only difference I could come up with was that the Little Vampire was written by an actual person that I can verify existed, and it was written in relatively modern times. Whereas the Bible was arguably written over a period of time by people we don't really know, and I can't verify very much about it beyond that. I certainly can't. I didn't. When I read the Bible in later years, I thought, well, if it's the word of God, then shouldn't there be some sort of revelation? But there was nothing for me. So either I'm a devil or a demon or something, or evil or bad or whatever you want to say. But I gave it a good shot. That's all I can say. And I read other texts as well, and they were more or less not convincing to me either. So anyway, carrying on.
Science claims that we came from some kind of primordial ooze.
Oh my God, I can't go a sentence without stopping. Science doesn't claim a single one thing of anything. There are always competing theories. We only have a few experiments that may, oh my God, I'm doing what SciManDan is doing. It's a category error. We don't, as atheists, have to explain where life came from. No. That's atheism just means I don't believe in God. Show me your evidence, please, that God exists.
That would be the atheist.
No, it wouldn't. Atheists simply, I don't have to know anything about the origin of life. I don't have to know anything about abiogenesis or evolution, which you completely conflate usually. Let's carry on.
The slime. Without a guidance, without a God, without anything. Now let's get to the important part of this. Let's get to the question that
as an aside, does that happen every time he says the word God? The word donate comes up. I'm not sure. I'm going to keep an eye on that.
Atheists have been waiting for.
Come on then. Spill it.
Obvious beginning question would be, where did the material come from?
No, that is not. No, atheists do not believe in a God or gods. Where the universe comes from is not material, pun intended, to the question of whether God exists. No.
If there's no guiding force. The second question is, where did the mechanism come from that makes it to where the slime, whenever it started becoming anatomical body shapes, what was it that was inside of the mind or the brain or the anatomy of such creatures that made it to where they didn't just turn around and begin killing each other like narcissistic sociopaths?
I think the choice of words here reveals a great deal about your own state of mind. But apart from that, so basically because you don't understand, that's an argument from personal incredulity. Because you don't understand it, therefore God. And this is a common strategy for religious people is, see, science doesn't know everything, or you don't know everything, therefore God. It's the God of the gaps. And normally what that means is people like him are afraid that at one point we will be able to explain, and not just explain, but explain to people like him so that he can then understand. I'm not saying he's stupid, okay? I know I've fairly heavily implied it, but I don't even mean that. I mean somebody who is not a scientist, somebody who's not educated in the basic principles of science. When we have the ability to explain at a fundamental level how it all works, and we may never be able to do that, we may be able to do that tomorrow, in 50 years, who knows? It doesn't matter. It's not material to the question of whether God exists. So disprove evolution, disprove abiogenesis. It doesn't mean that we have a proof for God. All we then know is that our current scientific understanding is not correct. But here's the thing. I trust science more than I trust religion and people who claim to interpret a 2,000-year-old book in the correct way. So I may have to skip through much of this video. I've already talked far too long. I can't keep going like this. Let's hear your proof then, please.
Science tells us that there's no experience come from. Where does the mechanism come from where we even running around in that thing to actually help you and to assist you in any of the things you got? And then, of course, there's the common problem of why is it that humans have all these abilities, but all these other creatures, except a bunch of rabbits, sat around a tree stump like Winnie the Pooh and discussed their options about this. And like I said about nature, nature doesn't know anything about rabbits.
Stop swearing.
It doesn't have a name for any of the creatures because nature itself isn't conscious.
So consciousness does not mean God exists. This is another thing. It's like, so what we perceive as consciousness, firstly, you can't prove that anybody else has consciousness. You simply can't do it. Okay?
Where where did the advantages come from? Where did the benefits come from? No one seems
Have
to
you got
know.
a point?
No one seems to have the answer to that.
But if you don't listen to evolutionary biologists because you're so mired in your Bible belief that you have to reject evolution, then nobody can tell you the answer. You know, Christians always say, open your mind, open your mind. You have a closed mind, my friend. Go and talk to an evolutionary biologist, and don't ask SciManDan unless he is an evolutionary biologist. Ask somebody who knows. Sorry, SciManDan, you will never ever see this video, but you know, I don't mean to imply that you don't know stuff about that, because you do, but I think you do. But I don't either. I'm going to cut this whole thing. Okay, so ask somebody who understands about evolutionary biology. Don't ask somebody who, like me, has no expertise in the subject. I might give you very well an answer that is not very good when it comes to explaining evolution and evolutionary biology. But that doesn't mean that because I can't explain it, therefore God exists. Because you don't understand it, therefore God exists. Because you don't want to listen to the answers, therefore God doesn't exist. Where is your proof that God does exist? That's what I want to know. And you have failed so far, other than swearing. Thank you very much, which I'm going to have to edit. Okay, let's see. Last two and a half minutes.
But the atheists are pegged into believing that it's so possible that minds can come into existence and all of these abilities can come into existence from nothingness. But
firstly, what we normally say to that is, we don't know. If we're not pegged to anything, we just say we don't know. We don't have to have the answers. You are supposed to have the answers. So use your Bible. Tell me how consciousness can be measured, how God can be found. Any of these will do. Okay? But you can't, because the Bible is a mess. Slavery, catastrophe, murder, death, it's a mess. And I wouldn't take it to be my moral, the moral authority for my life. I once believed that Jesus was relatively okay, and that if people lived their life like Jesus, then, the world would be a better place. But there are also problems with that, and I'm not sure how much of my own faith in that sort of scenario. I don't want to call it faith, because I know what you'll do with it. But my belief that actually it's not a bad moral guide was basically based on what people were interpreting it to mean, rather than what is actually in the Bible. I've not gone back to reinvestigate that, because I don't have the time and I don't see the benefit of it.
Idea of a superior mind that is greater than ourselves existing out in the universe, able to terraform.
I can stop you here. There are many minds superior to mine. Okay? So there's no problem with that. I have no problem admitting that I'm not the cleverest person in the world. Okay? I may have some degrees, I may have a doctorate. It doesn't matter. There are still many, many more intelligent people in the world. In fact, probably about 51% of the people in the world are more intelligent than I am, and 49 aren't. And I'm somewhere in the middle, right? But that doesn't prove that God exists, and it doesn't show how atheists need to prove that God doesn't exist. It simply doesn't compute. You've got it wrong, mate. Sorry.
And produce planets and worlds is way too much for them. Isn't that exactly what we did, though? Isn't it exactly what we do? Whenever we got the ability to be intelligent, whenever we got smart enough to acknowledge our own existence as well as the environment and world around us, we began creating. We began designing. We began making things. So if we could supposedly get better, and we could get more intelligent, and be able to have an understanding of more things along.
This is a common misconception as well. People in the past weren't less intelligent. They just had less information to work with and fewer tools. That's it. They were more or less just as intelligent as we are. The problem is garbage in, garbage out. So if the only book you're presented with is the Bible, don't expect Nobel Prize winning scientists to come out of that.
The longer that we live and the longer we survive, then how can some stupid atheist come along and tell us that there's not something out there that's greater than ourselves, capable of doing much more, due to the fact that...
Because you haven't shown me that there is. And that is precisely my point. Where is the logic in any of what you said showing that God exists? Show me.
It's been around a super long time and understands a hell of a lot.
Are you about to cry? Don't cry, Brett. Jesus. Okay, I was a bit mean maybe beforehand, but here's the thing. Just because we can't, I'll say that again, just because we can't explain it doesn't mean God exists. And just because things have been around for a long time and are really complicated to understand doesn't mean God exists. Okay? I can't crack a safe. A safe is far too complex for me to understand how it works and crack it. Okay? So there are maybe a gajillion combinations. I'm just too lazy to crack it. Therefore, I am now pronouncing it can't be cracked. That's the equivalent of your God claim. I'm convinced that nobody can understand all of the workings of the universe. So therefore, I'm not going to try, and I'm not going to find out whether there is anything else that I can understand. I'm not going to put a stethoscope to the safe. I'm not going to try out random combinations. I'm just going to sit there and do what exactly? Complain that other people are. And that's what you do. That's it. Anyway, 1 minute left to go, and I really have to stop there.
More than we could ever understand. Where did the mechanism come from? See, it makes sense. If you were designing a robot, if you were creating a robot or you were giving birth to it,
designing a robot or giving birth are two completely different processes. Completely. They couldn't be more different. Well, anyway, sorry.
A child, it makes sense that a parent would teach the child how to do things. It makes sense that if you created a robot, you would put safeguards into it and you would design.
Here's a person who has got no experience of little children. It doesn't matter how many times you tell a little child the thing is hot or the thing is sharp or don't climb up on there. It will climb up. It will touch the thing. It will cut itself occasionally on something sharp, like, walking over a stone or whatever before somebody thinks I'm letting my kids play with knives. Children have to experience things firsthand, and that's all we're claiming for ourselves. Let me experience your proof firsthand. Don't tell me that there is a God. Show me that there is a God. And you have failed, my friend, to do any of these things.
It in such a way where it wouldn't harm other things.
Irrelevant. If our universe was full of things that killed each other, but just enough had just enough quiet time in order to reproduce, it wouldn't matter. In fact, there are loads of things that kill each other all the time, but they don't kill every single last part of that species. And that is the point. Male polar bears go around killing their own offspring because it's competition for the area that they live in. It's competition for the food and so on. And of course, they can't kill every single cub because otherwise they simply wouldn't survive. But it doesn't show anything. It doesn't show anything about the existence of good nature, bad nature, God. Where is it? Where is your God?
And if you wanted the robot to one day be able to have a mind of its own and think like itself, then you would have to program it with the potential and the ability to do that.
No, you wouldn't actually, because the programming itself is the software that runs the robot. Right? So if you had a matrix which could just randomly form thoughts, that's not a bad way to maybe create consciousness. If you have a matrix which randomly assembles thought, takes in data, and eventually maybe there is a bit of data that can manage other bits of data, that is not a terrible way to actually create potentially artificial intelligence. But I don't know enough about it, but it strikes me that this is more or less what chemistry is actually all about. And that's something I can tell you. There are systems, molecular systems, which self-assemble, and subtle changes in pressure can make those systems behave slightly differently. And it's not without the realm of without the realm of possibility of having a molecule that can simply replicate itself or build other molecules. It just is very imaginable if you know anything about chemistry and have some experience in it. But there you go. I'll let you finish. Last 30 seconds.
Of course, it's not something you want to throw into something like that unless you've really thought it out.
Are you saying that God hasn't thought this out? If God exists, he hasn't thought it out? Because that's very much what it looks like to me. Human beings are fallible. They're not perfect. We get ill. We make stupid choices. There's the Darwin Awards for people taking themselves out of the gene pool. I mean, it's a bit of fun and it's tragic at the same time, but there we are. So, are you saying that God is not omni anything? Well, then it might as well be another human being and not God, no?
Probably want to give it baby steps, give it a chance to actually.
Funnily enough, that's exactly what evolution does. Baby steps. But I'm not an expert, so let's carry on.
Actually understand some things before you just go letting it loose on the world like that.
It does sound like evolution. That's the thing. So you've got 10 little bacteria, and they all, one one comes across some sugar, and it can digest it somehow, let's say, and then maybe some other changes happen, and it finds a food source following the sugar. Maybe it develops some sort of molecule that can sense sugar and sort of make an active effort to go into that direction. Who knows? But the whole point is evolution over billions of years. It's not without my imagination that could happen. And I don't need to have a god snapping their finger and going, there you are. That's the whole point.
All right, so this is part 1 of questions that atheists will not be able to answer. The comments are open. Let's see if any of these dum-dums are able to answer.
Thanks for the absence of any insults and ad hominems. And another thing that I need to edit out. Thanks very much for that. But I'm not sure my heart can take part 2, but I'm sure I'll go through it at one point, maybe. Who knows? I'll let him finish and then sign off myself.
Answer any questions. God bless.
Okay, thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.